So welcome my dear students. So welcome to Civics Chapter 1, the Constitution of India. So what do you mean by constitution? The constitution of a country is a set of rules, regulations, provisions that describe basic beliefs and values that the country and the powers and duty of a government are established. The constitution lays down rules and regulations which citizens of a country is abide by. So every country is having their own rules, regulations, and provisions. Set by the constitution of a country, and even India has all the rules and regulation provisions based on based, and it describes basic beliefs and values of the country. So these are the reason why India has having a constitution is that. Because of constitution we are able to get n number of freedoms, and we are able to enjoy equal rights, fundamental duties, fundamental rights, and everything, all because of the constitution. So we are going to see detailed analysis of constitution. So what is the constitution, what is the purpose of constitution, why we need constitution. So if India was not having constitution, what were the different kind of problems that going to rise. And since we are having constitution, so what are the kind of and what are the kind of allowance, or what are the kind of positive impacts what we are enjoying at the country even now. So these are the important topics that we are going to study in the constitution right now in this chapter. So moving to the second topic, that is what was the need for a constitution. So why do we need a constitution in India? India gained independence. We know that India gained independence from British on 15 August 1947. After a long struggle, independent India adopted democratic form of government. We know what is democratic form of government. In our previous classes, we used to study from class 6, 7. We have already studied what is democratic government. So what is democracy? So how democratic government have taken place? So what is the kind of different kind of democratic scenario? So all the kind of minor information regarding the democratic government you have already studied in your previous classes. Now we are not going to discuss more about it. At the time of independence, Indian society was having different kind of problems such as backwardness, social inequality in terms of caste, religion, wealth, and gender, etc. And equality was one of the important features of democracy. And for a successful democracy, you need all the people of a country to enjoy equal rights. So if you want to enjoy equal rights, so one of the important things is that you need a constitution which allows people to enjoy equal rights, and there should not be any kind of discrimination between rich and poor, having each separate rules and regulation, and the political leaders and citizens should be having rules and regulations. So every citizen, every individual, or every citizen who live in India should be given equal rights in which they follow. So that's the reason why Indian constitution was given equal rights based on the democracy. So we have equal rights, so we will be able to ask questions if the government or if the kind of ruling party is not giving the proper kind of allocation or proper kind of rules or proper kind of governance. We have the right to ask them why, what, and everything else, all because of the constitution of India. So we all enjoy the freedom and the power and also the fundamental rights and various rights and various freedom also we enjoy, all because of the Indian constitution framework. So the reason we used to think sometimes why India was able to make this, and who are back, or who are behind this constitutional framework. It is none other than the freedom fight. None other than the freedom fighter leaders. We know that India was not. India did not frame rules and regulations. Suddenly, India was framed, and India was able to make the rules and regulations before independence itself. Before independence, our leaders realized that it is very important to establish India with a greater democracy, and also need to frame out a constitution that will definitely define the rights of every citizen. So it is their initiativeness and their vision that makes the constitution of India, and the need of bringing out the constitution that makes every citizen to have an equal right. So unless we are going to see what is the major purpose of a constitution. So every constitution is having their own purpose of every country. Indian constitution has the major purpose of Indian constitution is that Indian Constitution is an important because it clearly defines the power and functions of the elected representative who govern the country and the rights of the citizen. The laws of our countries are framed on the basis of guidelines that the Constitution provides. The Constitution outlines the ideals that bring the diversity of the people and communities together. The rules are based on these ideas and guidelines apply to all peoples and leaders alike. So, as I said, there is no kind of an partiality, or there is no kind of an individual difference for both people and leaders. So, they both the laws and both the rules are same for similar to both the people and leaders. The Constitution defines fundamental nature of a country, political system, describe in detail different organs of the government and their functions. It imposes certain limitations on the government to avoid misuse of power. So, if a constitution does not exist in India, what happens is that there is a kind of chances chances to get the political systems to overrule that is overrule the citizen of India, and it can also have the chances to get misuse of powers by the ruling. The misuse of powers by the government. So since we have a constitution, every government will be having their own limitations, and they will not be able to. They will not be able to misuse the power. If they misuse the power, the constitution is having its own rules and regulation in which they have to be given some kind of some kind of punishments, or some kind of rules which they have. If they deny something, they have some kind of applied punishments based on the constitution amendments listed down. So the constitution seeks to establish the rule law. No person can be above the law. People in powerful position cannot misuse this authority. Rules are clearly defined to prevent the domination of the minority by the majority. So the constitutional rule law, it clearly mentioned that there is no kind of special kind of privileges for powerful people, and if they misuse the authority, if they can be escaped. They will not be able to do that. Every people is equal before the law, and there is no one can prevent the domination of minority by the majorities. Also, the constitution provides special provisions for the upliftment of certain sections of the society who are socially and economically backward. So since we have constitution, we are able to make some kind of special provisions for the special provisions frame in order to lift up, or in order to uplift certain sections of society who are socially and economically backward. The constitutional guarantees the right to equality to all the citizens under the fundamental rights. No citizen can be discriminated against on the grounds of their religion, caste, race, or gender. Based on the principle contained in the Constitution, the government passes laws through the parliamental to get rid of unjust social practice like the caste system, untouchability, and female suicide. Next, we are going to study what do you mean by drafting of the Constitution. The Constituent Assembly of India was elected to write the Constitution of India. Its members were elected by the members of the Provincial Legislative Assemblies. It met for the first time in New Delhi on 9 December 1946. When India gained independence, the Constituent Assembly served as the first parliament. On 29th August 1947, a drafting committee was set up under the chairmanship of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar to prepare a draft of Constitution of India. The Constituent Assembly took almost 3 years to complete drafting the Constitution for Indian Indian independence of India. Uh, The constitution was formally adopted on 26 January 1950, on the day when India became a republic, and even now also we used to celebrate on 26 January. We celebrate as Republic Day because of drafting of the constitution. Because we used to celebrate this day because of the drafting of constitution, and for framing of the constitution, it takes a constitutional assembly. It almost took 3 years to complete the drafting constitution of independent India. So that is regarding about the drafting of constitution. Okay, next we are moving to the futures of Indian constitution. So Indian constitution, we are going to study what are the futures and how Indian constitution was established, and what are the important stress and what are the important key points was added, and what are the important stress given to each of the areas what we are going to study right now. So our constitution aims to establish a secular, sovereign, democratic society for a citizen who belong to diverse backgrounds. Hence, the constitution has very special features. Let us see some of them. The first feature is the preamble, the sovereignty, federalism, parliamentary form of government, separation of powers, secularism, fundamental rights, fundamental duties. So these are the features of Indian Constitution. So if you see the preamble, we have if you see the preamble. So what do you mean by preamble? So that we're going to study right now. So preamble is an introduction to the Constitution which contains fundamental values, philosophy, aims, and objectives on which our Constitution is based. The preamble highlights the fundamental values and guidelines principles of our institution. It serves as a guide for both the institution as well as the judge who interprets the same. However, the preamble is not enforceable in a court of law. The preamble of our constitution serves two purposes. The first purpose is services. It indicates the source from which the constitution gets its authority. The second purpose is it also states the objects which the constitution seeks to establish and promote. So the preamble of the Indian constitution, it's having a basically few things. First thing is that it's having fundamental values, philosophy, aims, and objectives which our constitution is based. The reason why we have a preamble of Indian Constitution, that is, we the people of India sovereignly declare. So if you see the preamble of Indian Constitution, we will be able to see some of the highlighting lines, that is the fundamental values and the guidelines principle of our Indian Constitution. It serves a guideline for both the Constitution as well as the judge who interprets the same. So that is regarding the preamble. So what do you mean by sovereignty? Sovereignty means within the preamble. The preamble states that India is a sovereign country. So sovereign means it is free from external control. People are governed by the laws made by their own representative. The government also formulate their own their foreign policy. So each people will be governed by laws made by their own representative. Representative in the sense that we have already studied about elections, different type of constituency, different type of candidates, and we used to elect our own representative. So whenever the people elect their own representative, they used to govern the people or citizen. We even now also we have political government of BJP. So they used to govern us. So we used to, they used to govern us, and we used to obey the rules and regulation laws they used to give it to us. So since there's a government, so we have to follow the government, and the government also formulates some of the foreign policies of their own foreign other representatives മാത്രമേ. Okay. Next is federalism. The federalism means government at two levels. In India, there is central government, and also in every state there is a kind of state government. So, since India is having two levels, it is not impossible if for one government at the center to rule a huge country like India. So the constitution ensures that there are government at different levels. The constitution tries to make two levels of government autonomous by clearly defining subject on which each government can make law. The subjects are categorized into union list and state list, and even control list is also there. So, what do you mean by union list means union list will be within the center, whereas state list is framed by state government. But both the governments make the law subject is called as congruent list. That is, congruent list means it includes both the central government and state government. Both the government makes their own list. So that is about the federalism. What do you mean by parliamentary form of government? The elected representative who exercise the political power on behalf of the people become member of the parliament at the center or state legislative. Every law enacted by the parliament or the state legislative has to be accordingly to the constitution. The constitution also guide us universal adult franchise, which means that what do you mean by universal adult franchise? That is, the people, citizen above 18 years or 18 years of age have the right to vote. That is called universal adult franchise, which means that citizens of India can vote in an election to elect the representatives, and also every citizen after a certain age which is that certain age means after 18, he or she can contest the election. So, what is separation of power? Separation of powers means the government of our country has three main organs: the legislature, the executive, the judiciary. The Constitution clearly and defines the powers and roles of three organs. The legislative frames the law, executive implements them, and judicial resolves and disputes and maintains law and order. No organ, however, has absolute authority. The legislature and the executive can act as a check on each other powers. The Constitution also clearly defines the powers and functions of the judiciary. That is regarding the separation of the powers between legislature, executive, and judiciary of the three organs of the government. So what do you mean by secularism? Secularism means the state does not have a declared of any religion as a state religion, neither favors nor discriminates on the basis of particular religion. The constitution states that India is a secular country which does not have any official religion. Official religion sense that none of the country or none of the none of Indian every state do not has the right to declare that this is the religion. Every citizen who live in India has a right to enjoy a freedom of of any particular religion. They have the freedom of their own religion, and no one is going to question you which religion are you. So everyone has the right to have freedom of their own religion, to have a secular country. So, what are fundamental rights? Fundamental rights we have already studied in your previous classes about a few information and introductory part of fundamental rights. So, so what is fundamental rights in the the preamble is that the Constitution of India guarantees certain basic rights to all citizens. These rights are basic necessities for anyone who live in a defined manner. Citizen can approach the court directly if these rights are violated. The courts have the power to restore them and punish those who violate them. So, fundamental rights means is the right of each individual citizen. If the citizen not able to enjoy the rights what the constitution is giving, he or she has the right to ask the question why I'm not able to get these rights. What is the reason why I'm being denied these rights? So each individual citizen has a right to ask the question, and and if they're not able to if they're not able to get the rights, each citizen can go to the court and have powers to restore them and punish those who violate. Next, we are going to study fundamental duties. Fundamental duties are a code of conduct for each of us called fundamental duties. Was incorporated in the fundamental rights in 1976 by the 42nd Amendment to the Constitution. It is essential for us to understand that every right, what we enjoy right now, we have a corresponding duty. That is, we have fundamental duties, and so in the same as fundamental rights, We have to we have to follow some of the rules and regulations that has been listed in the Indian Constitution, and as a citizen we have to follow these individual rights, and we have to follow the duties what the Constitution that declare us, and instruct us to do it up, direct and us to abide by and respect the Constitution. Next is about the constitutional amendment. So, what do you mean by constitutional amendment? The government has frames laws for the benefit of the citizen. Since from independence, many social values and norms in many in our country have changed. As a result, sometimes the laws framed earlier may seem outdated, and even there is a need to amend and even replace them with suitable laws in tune with the changing times. The process of making a change to the constitution is called constitutional amendment. Constitutional amendment, in a simple phrase, we can say that if a constitution or if any kind of laws in a constitutional, if sometime it is early, if it is outdated, or if you wanted to change, and if you think that a citizen or if the governing party, if they think that it is not I mean this law is not being useful for the present stage, so it need to be outdated, so it should be changed. So if some kind of change take place, this process of change is called in the constitution is called as constitutional amendment. So when the major when the majority feels that the law is outdated or need to change the need to change the constitutions, is the new law will bring out about the positive change in society, it can be incorporated in the constitution. Therefore, laws are always changing and evolving. For example, let's say that the best example we can point out is the Indian Constitution took positive steps to give women the equal status same as men, and these provisions is also part of fundamental rights and the directive principles which provide that that the state shall also try to ensure equality between man and woman. And the second important constitutional amendment is the Act of Hindu Succession Act of 2005, is a step towards the equal rights of equal rights of status of women, and a new law strives to end discrimination by giving equal rights to son and daughter. That is, each the son and daughter should be given equal rights to the parental property. That is the that is a constitutional amendment put forward in 2005 as a part of Hindu Succession Amendment Act. And these provisions for making changes in the constitution that are contained in the constitution itself make our constitution a living and adaptable document. So these are regarding constitutional amendment. And next topic what we are going to study is laws and dissent. Protest against a law. That means we have to protest against a law if a law is not suitable for us or suitable for a citizen or suitable for a government or a country. So we have to protest the law, and we have to make sure that that law is not going to implemented, or refusal to obey a law. So if a law is being implemented, and if you refuse that this law is not practically going to make any kind of development, or not going to make a peaceful harmony among citizens, so we can have a refuse that we are not going to obey the law, and we can refuse the law. So this is known as dissent. So laws and dissent, that is the topic what you're going to study in this topic. So in a country where public opinion is valued more, dissent is very common. So in India, where we have a government, we have opposition, and we have every citizen used to raise their voice when any kind of laws is not suitable for every citizen or not suitable for certain section of society. They used to raise the voice, and this dissent keeps on take place in India, and India, where a law is not acceptable by a certain group of people, they might refuse to abide by it and protest against it. If a law is against the welfare of the society or violates fundamental rights, such protests are justified. Descendants can sometimes bring about change or transformation in the existing laws. However, sometimes descendant can be violent. The reason why descendant can be violent is that some of the laws will not be changed. So what happened is that some kind of protest may take place, and these protests may lead to some kind of violence, and these violence can lead to a number of problems within the society and within the country, and can lead to majority of upheavals in the society. So these are regarding the laws and dissent. So KADA uprising in 1918, the KADA Gujarat, a terrifying famine occurred. The British government of the Bombay Presidency, however, wanted farmers to pay full tax at an increased rate of interest. Full tax in the sense that during those period, in 1918, British government was ruling out of the Bombay Presidency. So during those times, the British was, forcefully they were telling the farmers to pay a full tax with an increased rate of interest, and the poor farmers, they were not able to pay because they are not having that much income to pay it out. So what happened was that during those time, the non-violence protests by the farmers were led by Mahatma Gandhi. This incident is known as KADA Satyagraha. So Mahatma Gandhi led a non-violence protest by farmers. So this incident is known as KADA Satyagraha, and the farmers refused to pay tax, not to, the pay tax, and did not resort to violence even their land and properties were being seized. That is, when the farmers refused them, the farmers told the British government that they are not going to pay the tax, pay the tax, and so what happened was that the British government they started seizing their lands and properties, but the farmers do not violent, or they do not give any kind of response to the British when they seize their lands and properties. They have non-violently they have been there when they were seizing it. So finally, the British have to agree the farmers' demand of not paying taxes for that year, reducing in the rate of taxes and return of the confiscated properties, returning of the Finally, the British have agreed to the farmers' demand because of their fight, because the British government was not able to get any of the income. So the British was forcefully, they were forcefully, they were forcefully was given back all the farmers' land and everything what they seized from farmers. They have given back, and they have given some kind of demands for the farmers for not paying taxes for that year and reducing the rate of interest in back after the kind of an strike that done by farmers in KEDA pricing. And next is about Titanium Square as a protest in 1989. So this incident take place, this incident is also called as June 4th incident, was a series of protests and demonstration in China, and that were stubborn by the government in the period in June 1989. In the 1980s, students and some other sections of the Chinese population wanted political and economic reforms, but the Orthodox leaders of the country were against this. The Orthodox leaders, they don't want the Chinese student of the Chinese population to enjoy what they wanted as political or economic reforms. So what happened was that a democracy and anti-corruption government official who Yoban was forced to resign his post in 1987. After his death in 1989, the protests began on the day of funeral on April 22nd. 10 of thousands of students gathers in Tiananmen Square in Belgium, demanding democratic and other reforms. For the next several weeks, many more students gathered in the same square. Similar demonstrations took place in the say other cities too, such as Shanghai, and Nanjing. In May 1989, army troops tried to reach Tiananmen Squares but were blocked by citizens and Beijing. On the night 3 to 4 June, tanks and heavy armed troops advanced towards Tiananmen squares. They opened fire, and those who tried to block their way. Once the soldiers reached the squares, their remaining demonstrations were forced to leave. By June, the military had secured the complete control over the protests of other cities. Well, the Chinese government arrested thousands of suspected students and imprisoned several of them and even executed some. So this is regarding two examples of, as you see, laws and descendants. So in the first example you have, that is the farmers example. For the farmers example of KADA pricing, you have seen how the law they were able to protest, whereas in the second example you can see how the descendant come to an end for this Chinese when the students started protesting against over their rights, what they want about the political and economic reforms. So both examples has a key importance and stress more of these laws and descendants. By this we have come to end of this chapter, the constitution. So we have studied the constitution, the purpose of constitution, the need of constitution. So what are the kind of features of constitution, and so that is regarding the kind of a small overview of this chapter. So thank you, dear students.